Have you ever noticed how, even after achieving something you longed for, the feeling of happiness fades faster than you imagined? You finally land the job you wanted, buy the car you dreamed of, or celebrate the relationship you always hoped for. And yet, a strange emptiness creeps in. It's almost embarrassing to admit. Shouldn't you feel complete now? Isn't this what you were working so hard for? This silent contradiction, the joy of achieving something followed by the dull ache of emptiness, is more common than we like to believe. Many people go through life chasing momentary peaks of happiness, only to feel the valley afterward is deeper than before. And if you've felt that cycle, you are not alone. It is, in fact, a deeply human experience. Think about the last time you reached a milestone. Maybe it was finishing a degree, paying off a debt, or even going on that long-awaited trip. In the moment, it felt good, almost like a promise fulfilled. But afterward, did you notice how quickly your mind returned to searching, restless, scanning for the next thing? It's as if happiness were never meant to be held, only pursued. And that leaves us wondering, if happiness is supposed to be the goal of life, why does it so often dissolve into dissatisfaction? This is where today's reflection begins. Because what if the emptiness you feel is not a sign of failure, but rather a clue that you're asking the wrong question? What if life was never about the chase for happiness at all? The Austrian psychiatrist Viktor Frankl, who survived the horrors of concentration camps, suggested something radically different. That meaning, not happiness, must be at the center of our lives. His insight forces us to look beyond the temporary highs and ask, what am I living for? So before we go any further, pause for a moment. Ask yourself honestly, how many times in your life have you reached a goal and still felt restless afterward? What does that tell you about the nature of happiness itself? If this resonates with you, stay with me. Because by the end of this journey, we'll see how what looks like emptiness may actually be an invitation, a doorway to a deeper, more enduring way of living. And if you've ever wrestled with the question of why happiness slips away, then this reflection is meant for you. Before we continue, share in the comments. Have you ever felt that emptiness right after getting something you thought would finally make you happy? And don't forget, if this message already resonates, like this video and subscribe so we can keep walking this path of reflection together. Picture this. Instead of running after happiness like a fleeting shadow, what if your life was guided by something deeper, something that could not be taken away by circumstance? Imagine waking up in the morning not asking, how can I feel good today? But instead asking, what can I give today? What meaning can I create through my actions? This small shift changes everything. Suddenly, you are no longer a passive consumer of pleasant experiences, waiting for life to hand you satisfaction. You become an active participant, shaping your existence with purpose. Happiness may still visit, but it arrives as a companion, not as the master you serve. Think for a moment about the most fulfilling experiences of your life. Were they times when everything was easy and comfortable? Or were they the moments when you poured yourself into something bigger than your immediate pleasure? Caring for a child, finishing a project that demanded discipline, helping a friend through suffering, or persevering through a hardship that tested your character? Chances are those moments left you with a quiet strength, a kind of satisfaction that happiness alone could never match. Now imagine carrying that perspective into every corner of your life. Imagine working not just for a paycheck or recognition, but because your labor contributes to something meaningful. Imagine approaching relationships not as a source of constant emotional highs, but as a sacred space where your responsibility, loyalty, and presence give someone else stability. Imagine even facing suffering, not as meaningless tragedy, but as an opportunity to grow in dignity and resilience. That world is not a fantasy. It is a reality available to you if you dare to change the question. Instead of chasing, how do I feel good? The deeper question becomes, what am I living for? And when that question shapes your choices, emptiness loses its grip. Viktor Frankl once said, happiness cannot be pursued, it must ensue. Meaning is the soil from which joy can grow naturally. The paradox is this: the more you stop chasing happiness, the more room you create for joy to take root in your life. So here is the challenge. Take one area of your life, work, relationships, or even your daily routine, and ask not, What do I want from this? But what can I give to this? Notice how your sense of inner balance begins to shift. If you could reimagine your life with this perspective, what would change first for you? We live in a culture that constantly whispers, sometimes even shouts, that happiness is the ultimate goal. Advertisements promise it, social media flaunts it, and conversations often circle around the search for it. If only I had more time, more money, more freedom, then I would finally be happy. But here's the disruption. What if happiness, as we commonly understand it, is a mirage? Think about it. Happiness is often tied to circumstances. Getting the raise, falling in love, buying something new. Yet circumstances change. They slip through our fingers like sand. The very things we once believed would guarantee lasting satisfaction quickly become ordinary. That new phone feels exciting for a week, maybe two. That promotion eventually turns into routine stress. Even love, if seen only as emotional highs, can fade into monotony. Here lies the hidden trap. By making happiness the center of our lives, we are setting ourselves up for constant disappointment. Why? Because happiness is not designed to last. It is a byproduct of fleeting moments. And when the moment passes, we are left with the void. This is the insight that shakes us awake. The emptiness is not proof that you are broken. It is proof that the formula you were taught, chase happiness and you'll be fulfilled, is flawed. The problem isn't you. The problem is the belief itself. Viktor Frankl argued that happiness is like laughter. You cannot force it directly. You don't wake up and say, "Today, I will laugh." Laughter arises naturally when something funny happens. In the same way, happiness arises when life has meaning. The pursuit of happiness in itself is like chasing the echo of your own voice. So let's confront the uncomfortable truth. If you have been searching endlessly for happiness and still feel empty, it's not because you are failing. It's because you are chasing the wrong target. What changes when you see happiness not as the purpose of life, but as a side effect of meaning? Everything. The constant anxiety of, "Am I happy enough?" dissolves. You stop measuring your worth by your emotional highs. Instead, you root yourself in something that lasts beyond moods. Ask yourself this: how many of your pursuits are really about chasing feelings rather than building meaning? And how would your choices change if you stopped serving happiness and started serving purpose? To ground this reflection, let's turn to someone who lived through circumstances that most of us cannot even imagine. Viktor Frankl, an Austrian psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, endured years in Nazi concentration camps. He witnessed starvation, humiliation, brutality, and the systematic stripping away of human dignity. And yet, in the midst of that unspeakable suffering, he observed something remarkable. Those who found meaning, even in horror, were the ones most likely to endure. Frankl noticed that survival was not simply about physical strength or luck. Some of the strongest prisoners collapsed quickly, while others, frail in body, seemed to summon strength from an unseen source. What made the difference? It was the presence or absence of a reason to live. For some, it was the hope of reuniting with loved ones. For others, the commitment to finish a project or share knowledge with the world. That sense of why gave them the resilience to face any how. After the war, Frankl poured these insights into his book, Man's Search for Meaning. In it, he declared that happiness and success cannot be pursued directly. They must ensue as unintended consequences of living with meaning and responsibility. He wrote, "Those who have a why to live can bear almost any how." This simple but profound statement continues to resonate across cultures, generations, and disciplines. Now let's bring this closer to home. Think of your own life. When you face difficulties, stress at work, conflict in relationships, financial strain, what carries you through? Is it the promise of feeling happy again? Or is it something sturdier, like your commitment to a child, a partner, a principle, or a dream that matters more than your comfort in the moment? Frankl's experience validates what many of us sense intuitively. Happiness is too fragile to sustain a life. It can be destroyed by illness, loss, or injustice. But meaning can survive even in the darkest night. Meaning transforms suffering into sacrifice and sacrifice into dignity. So here is the invitation. Instead of asking, "How can I be happy?" begin to ask, "What is the meaning I can live for, even when life is painful?" Because if Frankl could find purpose inside a concentration camp, perhaps we too can find purpose within the challenges of our daily lives. What might your why be, the reason that can carry you through any how? There is a hidden cycle many of us live without even realizing it. It goes like this. We set a goal, we imagine the joy it will bring, we work hard, we achieve it, and then, after a short burst of satisfaction, the emptiness creeps back in. That emptiness pushes us to set another goal, start another chase, and repeat the cycle again. It's like running on a treadmill, constant movement, but no real arrival. Psychologists call this the hedonic treadmill. No matter how much progress we make, our emotional baseline quickly resets. We adapt. What once felt extraordinary becomes normal. That's why the new car, the bigger apartment, the career milestone, all lose their shine faster than we expect. We are wired to adapt, and while that adaptation protects us in hard times, it also robs us of lasting satisfaction in good times. But there is another invisible dynamic at play, the cultural pressure to always feel good. We are told that a meaningful life should be comfortable, easy, and happy. So when we inevitably feel restless or dissatisfied, we assume something is wrong with us. We scroll through social media, comparing our messy reality with curated highlights of others, and conclude that we are failing at life. The truth, however, is simpler and more liberating. You are not broken. You are human. The emptiness is not a flaw in your character. It is a signal pointing toward something deeper that has been neglected. That signal is meaning. When we mistake the pursuit of happiness for the pursuit of life, we silence the voice that asks, "Why am I here? What greater purpose can I serve?" The void grows louder precisely because meaning has been ignored. Consider this. Some of the most joyful people you will ever meet are not those with perfect lives, but those who carry heavy responsibilities with love. Parents who sacrifice sleep for their children. Caregivers who endure long days but radiate peace. Artists who struggle in obscurity yet pour themselves into their work. Their lives are not easy, but they are rich with meaning, and from meaning flows a deeper, steadier joy. So, here is the hard truth. The emptiness you feel is not a curse. It is a compass. It is calling you to step off the treadmill of endless pursuit and instead root yourself in what cannot be taken away. Purpose. What if instead of numbing that emptiness with distractions, you paused and asked, "What is this void trying to tell me?" Sometimes words can act like doorways. A single sentence can shatter illusions we've carried for years and open us to a new way of seeing. So let's pause here and draw out some truths that cut sharply, not to wound, but to awaken. Happiness is not a destination. It is a byproduct of meaning. The more you chase happiness, the more it slips through your fingers. Emptiness is not failure. It is an invitation to realign with purpose. A life centered on feelings is fragile. A life centered on meaning is resilient. Suffering without meaning is despair. Suffering with meaning is transformation. Each of these statements carries a paradox. What seems obvious on the surface is reversed when you look deeper. We are trained to believe that happiness is something we must pursue, that emptiness is something to escape, that suffering is always meaningless. But when we look through the lens of Frankl's wisdom, we begin to see how these assumptions collapse. Think about it. If you make happiness your life's mission, you will always feel anxious, constantly measuring, "Am I happy enough? Is this all there is?" But when you make meaning your mission, you don't need to ask that question. Happiness arrives as a quiet companion when it wishes, and even in its absence, your life remains anchored. Here's another way to frame it. Feelings are weather, but meaning is climate. Weather changes daily. Storms come and go, the sun rises and sets. Climate, however, endures. If you live chasing weather, your inner world will be unstable, unpredictable, and exhausting. But if you live rooted in climate, the storms will still come, yet they won't define your world. Now let's turn this into a practice. Write down one sentence that could guide your life beyond the pursuit of happiness. It could be as simple as, "My life is about contribution, not consumption," or, "I want to live in such a way that my suffering serves love." Let that sentence be your anchor when the void threatens to overwhelm you. Which of these statements resonated most with you, and why? Life has a strange way of teaching us through opposites. We crave happiness, yet it often feels shallow. We fear emptiness, yet it may hold the seed of transformation. Here lies a paradox worth pausing over. The very feelings we try hardest to avoid may be the ones that guide us to what we need most. Think of emptiness for a moment. At first glance, it feels unbearable, like silence in a noisy room, like a void where life should be full. Our instinct is to escape it, with work, entertainment, distractions, or new goals. But what if emptiness is not a curse, but a teacher? What if it signals that the life you are living no longer aligns with the deeper call of your soul? Here's the paradox. Fulfillment often grows out of the very emptiness we resist. The hunger you feel is proof that you are made for more than comfort. The dissatisfaction is not an enemy, but a compass pointing you toward meaning. Without emptiness, you might never search. Without the void, you might never awaken to the possibility of a richer, more grounded existence. Now contrast this with happiness. Happiness, as most people define it, is light, playful, and momentary. It is the laughter at a dinner table, the excitement of a new purchase, the warmth of being admired. But fulfillment runs deeper. It is often born in responsibility, in sacrifice, in perseverance. It doesn't always feel good in the moment, but it leaves you with the quiet assurance. This matters. This duality forces us to face an uncomfortable truth. Life is not about choosing one and rejecting the other, but about holding both. There will be moments of joy and moments of emptiness, but if you can reinterpret emptiness as the soil in which meaning can grow, it no longer terrifies you. It becomes part of the journey. So here's the surprising wisdom. The emptiness you fear may be the very doorway to the fulfillment you long for. To run from it is to miss its gift. To face it is to step into depth. The question then is not, how do I avoid emptiness? But, what is my emptiness calling me to build, to give, to become? Imagine living a life where your worth no longer rises and falls with every fleeting mood. A life where joy is not something you chase desperately, but something that flows naturally from the choices you make. That is the reward of shifting from the pursuit of happiness to the pursuit of meaning. When you build your life around meaning, you gain a kind of stability that pleasure alone can never provide. Happiness, in this case, becomes like sunlight breaking through the clouds, beautiful when it shines, but not the foundation of your survival. What sustains you is the deeper soil of purpose. This is the promise. Even when happiness is absent, life can still feel worth living. Consider how this plays out in practice. A parent who wakes at 3 a.m. to comfort a crying child is not happy in the conventional sense. They are tired, stretched, even frustrated. And yet, in that moment of sacrifice, there is a profound sense of worth. The reward is not pleasure, but the knowledge that love has been embodied through action. That is meaning, and from it comes a joy far more durable than happiness. Or think of an artist who spends years working on a project that may never bring recognition. Their days are filled with discipline, struggle, and even doubt. But they press on, not because it feels good every day, but because they are faithful to something larger than themselves. Their reward is not external applause, but the inner peace of living authentically. The beauty of this shift is that it gives you freedom. If happiness is your goal, then every difficulty feels like a failure. But if meaning is your goal, every difficulty becomes a test that refines your character. You can endure hardship, because hardship itself becomes a path to growth. And here's the paradoxical promise. When you stop making happiness the goal, happiness often finds its way back to you, quietly, unexpectedly, as a companion to a meaningful life. So pause and ask yourself, what kind of reward are you really seeking? The temporary rush of pleasure, or the lasting satisfaction of knowing that your life stands for something greater than comfort? To tie all of this together, let's ground our reflection in a conceptual framework that can guide your daily life. The Austrian psychiatrist Viktor Frankl developed what he called logotherapy, a therapy centered not on pleasure or power, but on meaning. And while it may sound academic, its principles are surprisingly practical. Frankl identified three primary pathways to discovering meaning. First, through creative work, what you bring into the world. This could be your job, your art, your craft, or even the way you raise a child. Meaning comes when your effort leaves a mark beyond yourself. Second, through love and relationships, not in the sense of romantic highs, but in the steady choice to value another person deeply, to see them fully, to serve them, to carry responsibility for their well-being. Third, through the attitude you take towards suffering. This is perhaps the most radical idea. Even when everything is stripped away, you still have the freedom to choose how you respond. Meaning can be found not only in joy and success, but also in the way you endure hardship with dignity. Notice how each of these paths shifts focus from how do I feel to what do I give, what do I embody. That shift is the essence of maturity. It transforms life from a series of emotional highs and lows into a coherent story you are writing with your choices. Let's frame this in simpler terms. If you want a life of depth, ask yourself three questions regularly. What am I creating or contributing that outlives me? Who am I loving with patience and responsibility? How am I facing my struggles, with bitterness or with courage? These questions form a compass. They do not eliminate emptiness, but they give direction through it. And direction is often more important than comfort. When you know your why, as Frankl insisted, you can bear almost any how. The beauty of this framework is that it doesn't depend on luck, wealth, or circumstances. It is accessible to anyone, anywhere. Even in the darkest situations, the possibility of meaning remains. So ask yourself, which of these three paths, creation, love, or attitude toward suffering, needs more attention in your life right now? We have traveled together through some difficult but essential truths. That happiness alone cannot sustain us. That emptiness is not a curse but a signal. And that meaning, through creation, love, and the way we face suffering, is the foundation of a life worth living. Viktor Frankl's wisdom reminds us that even in the darkest conditions, the human spirit can rise when anchored in purpose. But now the question comes back to you. What will you do with this insight? Will you continue chasing the fragile highs of happiness? Or will you begin to build a life where meaning is at the center? This is not a comfortable path. It requires responsibility, sacrifice, and courage. Yet it is the only path that can transform the void into fulfillment. Pause for a moment and ask yourself, what is the one area of your life where you've been chasing happiness only to feel emptiness afterward? And what would it look like to reframe that area around meaning instead? Maybe it's your work. Could it be more than a paycheck? Maybe it's your relationships. Could they be more than a source of comfort? Maybe it's even your suffering. Could it become a testimony of resilience rather than a story of defeat? The invitation is simple, but profound. Stop asking, how can I be happy? And start asking, what am I living for? Let that question guide your choices, and watch how joy, peace, and strength begin to emerge, not as goals, but as companions on your journey. If this message resonated with you, I want to hear from you. Share in the comments. What is one why that gives your life meaning right now? It could be a person, a responsibility, a dream, or even the way you're choosing to endure hardship. Your reflection may inspire someone else who is silently wrestling with emptiness. And if you want to keep walking this path of deeper reflection, away from shallow promises and toward a life of substance, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and join this community of seekers who refuse to settle for less than truth. Remember, happiness comes and goes, but meaning remains. And when you live for meaning, you no longer need to fear the emptiness. It becomes the soil where your truest self takes root.